It is now 3 o'clock. It's time for the work session on the 25, 26, 27 budget, whatever. One of those budgets or two of those budgets. And at this time, I'll turn it over to the city manager who's going to inform us.
Inform you. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we start, I wanted to provide some insight on the thought process behind the budget, how the budget, came together this year. Melanie and I discussed, and actually with all the department heads, we had conversations about what's happening at the federal level, little less on the state level, but federal level. And is there anything that we should be doing, possible tariffs, lack of federal funding, et cetera, all of the activities going on. And ultimately, we decided to continue forward with what we know at this time. And so you will see a budget very similar. You have seen the budget very similar to what you had in the past. And our thought is that if things change, this is a plan, we'll pivot and we'll come back to you with our new plan. Hopefully that won't be the case. And as you know, we don't really rely on a lot of federal funding. We do take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves, but we don't overly rely on it. So we feel pretty safe there, but we just don't know what's going to happen at the federal level. And the state level, there are things changing there as well. Won't affect us as much, but it's a plan. We'll be back to you if the plan changes. So I want to start then with the transmittal letter, which you will find at the very beginning of your budget book. I won't read it all to you. I just want to highlight a few things. So I'm going to start with the second page. It would be revenues and then the second paragraph. The sales tax projections for FY26 are based on the updated FY25 projections, plus estimated growth of 2% for brick and mortar businesses. I do want to note, as noted in the previous paragraph, that we, at the previous page, are conservative in these projections. I think we know that we're seeing a leveling off of sales tax for various reasons. And Melanie is looking at some of the reasons and doing some research about why leveling off. I think that with 2020 and all of the travel that came to Alaska afterwards, we're probably seeing that leveling off. During that time, as you know, Europe was kind of closed. And so people had on their bucket list Europe and Alaska. Alaska was open, so they came here. So we saw a lot of activity at that time. Perhaps we're seeing a leveling off, although I don't believe that Joel would believe that to be true because the campgrounds are hopping. So, and there's a lot of activity in town, but there is some leveling off. We do, as you know, when there's increased costs, we increase in sales tax, but we also have increased expenditures to offset that. So, and also, let's see, we brick and mortar 2%, and then remote seller sales tax projections are also based on FY25 projection plus an estimated growth of 5%. That is an area that we do continue to see really strong growth. If I remember correctly, it was projected last year at 25% for the online sales tax growth. So the sales tax revenues are estimated to be $10,655,250 in FY27, which is an increase of 2% over FY26, and $45,000 over the same time period for a 5% growth for the remote seller businesses. The property tax revenues, the taxable assessed values for FY26 are $743,000, just over that, compared to $690,000 for FY25, an increase of 7.6%. Say that again, Melanie?
That's assessed values.
That's million.
743 million assessed values.
Which is much higher than what I said. Thank you, Melanie. Okay, and also this budget does not include any changes to the mill rate, which is 0.5, or to the general sales tax, which is 3%. Something this year that we all did is we went through a really comprehensive review of all citywide fees to ensure the fees were fair, transparent, and accurate. And based on the review, thanks to the clerk's office. The clerk has put together an updated fee schedule that will be coming before you, and along with legislation removing fees from the code. The code will reference the fee schedule moving forward. And there have been changes to the fees, and we will discuss those at a later date. On page 3, I'm moving to the health insurance. As you know, in fiscal year 24, there was a change to the health insurance, and there was a substantial savings. However, in FY 25, there was an increase of 31.5%, which was a really scary blow to the budget. And we had originally planned to go back out to market had we seen another large increase. Happy to report there's a moderate increase of 8.5% and overall 7.8 to 7.9% increase. You know, at this time, and we like to say anything under double digits, we're happy with. You know, once upon a time, that wasn't true. If you saw double digits, it was really bad. But, excuse me, even a higher single digit, it was really bad. But this is where we live in nowadays with the health insurance increasing. We are very happy with that rate. So we're not proposing any changes this year to our plan. Yeah, absolutely.
So in addition to the rate increases, you'll notice that health insurance costs didn't increase all that much. And that's because the amount in the budget is impacted not only by rates, but also by employee elections. And so we have $11,699 of an increase in health insurance. And that's because $105,600 was rate adjustments, but then we had a decrease of $93,901 based on employee elections. So maybe somebody that used to have family coverage has dropped down to single coverage, or maybe they're covered under a spouse's plan now. So the overall health insurance increase is very small, even with that 7.8 to 7.9% increase.
Mr. Mayor, do you want us to ask questions as we move along, or, okay?
Go ahead.
Couple questions related to health insurance, because this is something I'm familiar with, the district side, and we've continued to struggle with this as well year after year. My understanding is some years back, we had removed ourselves from the Alaska Poly sub pool. And is that something that we could potentially move back to save money at this point? Or is the private market through offerings with like Aetna or Premier kind of our best or only option, I should say, at this point?
I think it's kind of our best and only option at this point. We wondered about that after we left and last year when we saw the big increase, but it's our understanding that this year the poly sub plan is actually going away, we've heard.
Okay.
So, I don't think that would be an option. Even if it was an option, I think getting back into the plan we had before, which was a substantial savings, we wouldn't be able to get into it the same way we were into it before.
Got it. My follow-up question is, to your point about the decrease of $93,000 resulting from election changes, I know it's commonly more expensive to have spouses or other family members on your plan versus if they have healthcare through an employer elsewhere, you obviously want them to utilize that. So you're not sharing the majority of that cost yourself. I know like the borough and more recently the school district, they implemented policies to where if you have a spouse that has healthcare elsewhere, but they refuse that and prefer to be on this plan, they get a penalty for that. And the whole point is to steer people back to using their employer offered plans rather than riding their spouses through City Soldotna in this example. Is that something the city does on their plan?
That is something the city does. Like, is it $150 a month? Is that what we charge? Yeah, $150 a month if your spouse chooses to not use their plan, but be covered under the city's plan.
Is that a recent thing that might account for the $93,000 decrease then, or?
That's something that we implemented when we switched to Primera.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
We also offer a cash in lieu if somebody chooses not to be covered under our plan.
Awesome.
Jessica, do you remember what cash in lieu is? $400 a month. Yep, sorry, $400 a month cash in lieu if somebody opts out of our plan and is covered under somebody else's plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Carrick?
Thank you. Just a question dealing with citywide fees. And again, I'm very pleased that, again, we want to be sure they're fair, transparent, accurately reflect our costs. Do we charge any difference between someone who is a resident of Soldotna as compared to someone who is not when it comes to our fees?
All fees are charged the same.
Is that fair? Since we began with your beginning statement, excuse me, the beginning statement here on this paper, the fees are fair. Is it fair that someone who lives in Soldotna and pays property tax and other things that they have the same fee as someone who does not. And so I'd be interested in just understanding the use of the word fair. And I don't necessarily need to see it now, but as we move forward, I'm going to ask that question again.
Sure. So I think I'll go with a partial answer now and then put more thought into that.
Yeah.
I think some of the the fees are for things especially related to planning and zoning and some of the CUPs and some of the other permits that come out of that department. And they're not always, they're non-city residents and residents that are charged those fees. And, you know, some of them are then building to become residents, and it's a whole big tangled thing. Put more thought into that and
Thank
get
you.
back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Carey's comment about that because it's something I actually feel strongly about, especially with the upcoming opening of our field house. I've had concerns that we don't have any delineation between resident and non-resident fees, especially when our residents have the addition of property taxes. They have the liability of carrying the bond for that. And I would love to see some kind of recognition of that for our city residents. And I had actually gone as far as to craft an ordinance to address this and had a lot of discussion with city administration about it. And there are two things that are currently preventing that. Right now in our city code, we actually have language that prevents us from discriminating between, it's actually called non-discrimination. We cannot legally have different fee levels for city residents versus non-city residents. So we'd have to have an ordinance to change that, which part of my ordinance would have done that. But the other thing from what I'm gathered in talks with administration is we don't really have a good mechanism by which to track city resident status. So as much as I would love to see us have some kind of way to have discounted fees for city residents, it just becomes an administrative nightmare from what I've heard to actually implement that as much as I'd love to see it.
Ms. Wackler.
My opinion on that, if you guys could speak to the percentage of our revenue that comes from sales tax versus property tax.
Right. Approximately 91% of our our revenue comes from sales tax.
So to respond to that, I do think that it is fair for being that a lot of our services are supported through sales tax. That sales tax revenue does come from an extended service area besides residents, and therefore having services that serve a greater community than just our residents is not necessarily unfair.
You also have the issue of trying to identify who's a resident and who's not a resident, because probably better than half the people around here that don't live inside the city have an address that says Soldotna. And then you're going to have to ask for ID and then locate them and everything else. And go ahead, Mr. Carey.
I'm just going to add one part because I don't want to go further, but maybe the word fair is not the best word, maybe realistic. So I'm not going to disagree with anything because it's factual, but fair would seem to have certain standards as compared to realistic. And so I was really focusing on that very first word, fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Carry on.
Oh, Carrie. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Moving on from the fees on to the COLA. This year, the 2.2% cost of living increase is been budgeted for both non-represented employees and represented employees. And it's a total increase of $188,000, just over $188,000 that have been included in the budget. At this time, no cost of living for FY27 is included in the budget because we will address that at mid-biennium, and it'll be also based on the cost of living, the CPI. All right. Okay. Moving on to personnel. Some of this you've already seen, but I just thought I'd go through it as well. During fiscal year 25, the city council approved changes to the staffing table, and those changes were reclassifying the utility manager, reclassifying the regular part-time admin assistant positions, and also adding the field house coordinator position. Because they were mid-year changes, it was funds were appropriated just through that time frame, and now the expenditures are in this budget moving forward. You have also seen the Parks and Rec position changes, and I'll go through those really quickly, but they are a full-time laborer that was renamed to Maintenance Technician 1, Maintenance Worker to Maintenance Technician 2, Learn to Skate Instructor to Recreation Specialist, Skate Guard Office Worker to Recreation Aide. The Campground Attendant and Recreation Aide positions were reclassified from range 1 to 3, Recreation Specialist from range 3 to 5, and Maintenance Technician 1 to range 5 to range 7 due to increased responsibilities. And the budgetary impact is all budgeted now in this budget. An additional Maintenance Technician 2 position, range 11, was added. Also, an increase of 1 FTE was added to the Recreation Specialist position, 1.5 FTEs to the Recreation Aide position, range 3, due to the opening of the field house. These positions will be part-time positions working 10 to 20 hours per week and have a flexibility to work in the ice arena, field house, and parks department. An increase of 0.63 FTEs were added as part-time laborer positions, range 5 in the Parks Department, due to increasing year-round outdoor recreational opportunities, expansion of the gardening areas, and additional lawns. And the increased number of events at Soldotna Creek Park, which we love. And new in the police department, we're reclassifying lieutenant position to sergeant position. The reason that we're doing that is, with the high turnover, and I would attribute that, it sounds negative, but actually we have quite a few retirements. And then some officers have left for different areas, but sometimes high turnover doesn't sound that great. But we do expect some continued retirement out of that department as well. And that creates some officers who are newer into the profession and desire to have a supervisor on each shift with those newer officers until they gain the experience. The animal control code enforcement officer position has been replaced with a police officer, and that was based on need. With the animal control services being contracted with Kenai, we have less activity in that area, and we have a greater need for more police officer activity. So thank you to the chief for identifying that, and then the animal control officer who will now become a sworn officer. They've had those discussions, so we're looking forward to her being a sworn officer.
Go ahead.
On the police department, can you talk a little about the school resource officer? I remember years ago we had one, and then it went away, and
Okay.
so.
Thank you. I will start, and then perhaps the chief could then add his thoughts on it. He and I talked about it. It is actually something that I think that we should do at some point in time. However, we're just not there staffing wise, and with full intention of, once we're fully staffed and we can have some experience in the department, to move to have an school resource officer position. Anything you wanted to add to that? To the microphone. Sorry,
It's just a priority. So I believe it was Sharon Mook years ago who was on the council that brought that position, that SRO position, to our department. And so I've always kept my eye on it because we've robbed from SRO whenever we've been down, which we've been down a lot. We've kind of pulled and not had an SRO officer. And so it's always been my goal to put that back where it belongs, because she fought for it. We got a whole position just to created for that. And so it's our goal to restore that. We do have a lot of high turnover. We have a couple that are at 25 years this summer. They're retiring. I'm happy for them, but also sad. And so we'll see where we are. Police wise, we struggle right now with recruitment all across the nation. It's hard to find police officers. And so we're in that battle with everybody else, but hopefully we're being thorough, we're being vigilant, we'll get it there and and part of that creation of the animal control officer is to create that new position to give us that opportunity to backfill it with the SRO position. So that's,
Wasn't some of
all.
that SRO federal funding, grant funding for that position way back when?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so.
Uh-oh.
We did receive a COPS grant
Right.
years ago. That was for an additional position. I don't necessarily believe it was for the SRO
Okay.
position, but it was for an additional police officer position.
Anything else? Mr. Nelson?
So for a couple questions, for the SRO, does the school district fund that? Not in any part? Okay. So the change here to the sworn position begs the question, who's doing animal control and code enforcement?
Yeah, so Trish Gordon is she was a certified police officer with Kenai Police. She worked for adult probations. But her certification has lapsed. And so she has agreed wholeheartedly. I've seen a great excitement in her because she was our animal control. And so she'll become animal control. That'll be her special assignment, but also police officer. So she'll do both functions.
I know I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you know
That's
about
okay.
how many calls for service for animal control you handle in a typical year? I'm just curious.
In a year, I didn't bring that data with me.
No big deal.
It's not overwhelming. I will say that. This will be a better use of her time.
So for code enforcement, am I correct in saying that's civil, that's zoning and those types of things? So I don't know if this is maybe not your function, chief, but where's that going?
And so currently Officer Gordon handles our animal control and code when they need it. And she would continue to do that. Like she would really do everything that she's doing now.
Stay in PD?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to add about enforcement is also, they do work hand in hand, both the building department, planning, and then the police department. So they do work hand in hand to do what they need to do for code enforcement. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move to the general fund recap, which is on page, it's after your, on page, page number 1, after the Roman numerals. After the yellow page, blue page that says general fund. But I'm going to go to okay, so this is the general fund recap, which has the revenues and then the operating expenditures. And you'll note that at the bottom that we are expenditures really over revenues. So we're basically in the red. There are a couple reasons for that, and over half of that is due to the field house. And the true cost, this is the number, 594,000 is for the true cost for operation of the field house. The other half will explain as we move through the budget. Some of it's hers on behalf, the salaries and benefits and software, but that'll be explained as we move through the budget. There are some, I do want to point out on page 2, revenues that are new, and thankfully we're very excited about to the field house. It's actually $260,200 of new revenue to the field house. And the reason why I pause is because there's been some shuffling of the revenues. For instance, events that were held at the ice arena is what we're calling it now. The ice arena have been moved to the field house. Therefore, that revenue went to the field house. Some events stayed at the ice arena. So there's been some shuffling. And in the conversations, I want to make sure I capture the correct number for that shuffling. That's why I keep pausing on that. Also, one of the new sources of revenue is entering into memorandums of understanding and regarding use of the field house. And the first one, it was with Central Peninsula Hospital. So we thank them. They are sponsoring seniors walking. There'll be some parameters and timeframes around that. And then also employee use of the field house. I don't want to get out ahead of them. They're going to be doing an announcement of this, and so we'll let them take that, but this is related to the revenue at the field house, so I did want to announce that revenue that we do see at the field house. Okay. I'm going to stop there because we'll go further into expenditures and then revenue questions as we move along in this. So I'm going to stop and then really just want to say, like I said, there's overall, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Curry.
Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off mid-sentence. I've certainly heard in terms of that we're basically following the same pattern that we have for the last few years.
Mhm.
This is, again, pretty much standard question I get to ask each year. Obviously, in making decisions, you can make them from a very conservative standpoint, or you can make them from, I'll say, a very progressive, since liberal is such a terrible word, I won't use that. In general, in doing our budgeting, have we stuck to a relatively conservative approach?
I would say, yes, that we have. And, I really, you guys know Melanie and you know her great work. And of course, I trusted her and really valued her opinion and the history and all. She's just wonderful. So, what can I say? So I wanted to follow that same approach.
Excellent.
And, I didn't want to come in and change this all up because what is going on here is working. Do we have some things that we don't know were going to happen? Perhaps. And then we will change things as we need to, and we'll bring that to you. But, things are working here in Soldotna, so we're going to continue that path.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, one follow-up.
Mr. Joseph.
Kind of on that note, so when we talk about the general fund and operating in the red for this coming year, I look at things like the 8.16% increase in salaries and benefits, and that's not necessarily a red flag, but one thing that might be helpful for us in future years when evaluating budget documents is maybe split that statistic out between salaries and benefits, because benefits, I'm assuming, that's likely going to be comprised of costs like healthcare, which are not really within our control. I mean, there's some small levers we can pull on that, but I trust that you guys are going to do your due diligence on this and get us the best healthcare we can without radically cutting benefits for our employees. Salaries is more within our control. So when I see something like an 8.1% increase, that's a big increase, but it would help us to better understand like how much of that percentage of an increase is in our control via, salaries, or outside of our control because it's healthcare.
Thank you. We will do that. Did you want to speak to the lapsing of funds and the history of the lapsing funds and the budgeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Typically, we included about, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago or so, we've added in a section of, I think it's on the recap page where, let's see, where there's a projected lapse, and
Page
we've
one.
used page 1, and we've used 5%, and that's what we're projecting will lapse in the expenditure, in the expenditures. Typically, we end up lapsing more than that, but that was a conservative number that we built in so that we didn't show that we were so upside down, because realistically, at the end of the year, we're not gonna, it's gonna look very different than this because of the conservativeness of how we budget.
I wanted to add to that. I'm not used to this lapsing funds thing. This is all brand new to me, which again, it's working, so I wouldn't change it. And and we've talked about the history of the lapsing funds. Are we on track to lapse the same amount of funds so that it does bring us into a balanced budget situation? So
For the
lots of conversations.
For lay people, what you're referring to is the expenditures were less than what were
Yes.
projected for that year.
Yes.
So it's money that's not spent.
Yeah, the lapsing funds is basically the amount of expenditures that you're not spending at the end of the year.
Yep.
So you book that as revenue for the next fiscal year, essentially?
No, it just goes back to fund balance.
Okay.
I mean, it's, yeah.
Comment?
Mr. Carey?
I just want to say, I want to strongly encourage the idea of lapse funds as compared to a philosophy that says, spend every penny you have, even if you don't need it. And so I think the lapse fund issue is a very good reflection of our employees and on the administration, that we spend what we need and we don't make sure that the budget is zero at the end, when indeed we didn't need to buy certain things. So I want to say the lapse fund to me is a very nice tool that we utilize. Thank you.
I agree.
Vice Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I would concur with Councilmember Carey, and I would trust that the administration and the departments realize, should something come up, as a council, we're easy to come to, and when something unexpected happens and they're like, oh, we need X, In looking through the general revenues, it's interesting to look at online sales and how that's gone up, and that our projections for the current fiscal year we're in are less than what we had received the prior year, which goes along with the conservative philosophy in putting together the budget. I see that we're looking at potentially a state library grant. I know that's one of those areas that's questionable. The legislature's going to be adopting a budget here soon, and we might need to make some adjustments on community assistance since that got cut from what had been in the House side to the Senate side. And I see in the summary where you had included the lodging tax monies, but I don't see it anywhere reflected in this document.
Melanie and I talked about it. We just, what do we do with this? Because the expenditures will be expended, we have to wait the full fiscal year to, first, this is our first time, so we don't know how much revenue. It is an estimated amount. And then we will have to, really wait that first full year before budgeting any expenditures. We decided to not budget the expenditures, and then to go, once we do, to go through the process, which is Parks and Rec and then council. So decided not to budget any at this time. I do believe that we will be back mid-biennium for 2027 to budget expenditures at that time. Did you want to talk about that time frame that we discussed?
Sure. When we implemented the tourism, the lodging tax, we set up a tourism enhancement fund. So it's a separate fund that's included in this budget. And we'll get to that tomorrow, but you'll notice that there's revenues in that fund. There's no expenditures in the fund yet, because we decided that it would be best to base the expenditures on the most recent fiscal year end balance. And so at the mid-biennium for FY 27, when we come back to you, we will base the expenditures that year. It will be based on FY 25's year-end balance, because that will be the most recent fiscal year-end balance. So that first year, which will be FY 27, will have basically half a year's worth of expenditures, because we started lodging tax January 1st. So we won't have a full year, but you'll be seeing something at the mid-biennium. There's nothing in this budget other than revenues budgeted. And it's really our best guess.
So basically,
We have one quarter down. I believe 70 operators that are registered with us, and I believe 61 have filed. So we've sent out delinquent notices for the 9 that haven't filed. And we raised about $23,847.03 for the first quarter, which we felt like was pretty good, given that it's like the winter.
so basically it's in a restricted fund until you get,
Correct.
can really track it better.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
And it isn't also, sorry, Jordan, it's also in the fund where we can't appropriate it. It's, you will be appropriating it.
That answered my question. I just want to make sure that the expenditures couldn't be actually realized without council authorization.
Yep. Mhm.
Thank you.
And following up to Councilman Chilson, the way that it's set up in the code, recommendation goes first to Parks and Rec, first makes a recommendation before it comes to council. So the Parks and Rec Commission is involved in the process as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
I was trying to get back to the other topic. That's okay. So just talking about conservative budgeting, I just wanted to make a comment. And again, this is at a very high level, just looking at spreadsheets, but it was interesting as I just kind of spot looked at some of the different department budgets. I was actually thinking to myself how little some of those line items increase based on what I would expect would just be, costs that would increase naturally with inflation. And of course, I come from this as somebody who's made budgets for agencies that maybe don't have a lot of flexibility. So I guess my only comment on that is I very much appreciate conservative budgeting. It's not a good thing for somebody elected to say, let's spend money, but and not discounting Vice Mayor Parker's point, of course, if something is needed, I'm sure the council will take care of it. But I guess I would just hope that as we're going through this and these different processes, there's enough contingency in there to just keep operations running. We know snow comes up and we do that ordinance from time to time and some of those things. And I don't want to micromanage, but it was interesting. It was a thought I noticed. So man, Mr. Carey brought it up. I thought I'd chime in. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, we do have contingency funds available. We also have the benefit of having our code state that the city manager has the flexibility to transfer within a fund of up to $20,000. So, you know, if electricity is over in one budget and under in another, you know, another department, we can transfer between the two. Or if snow goes up slightly, but it's not enough that we feel like we need to come back to the council for, we can move from something that might have come in under budget. We do have that flexibility, plus the contingency, plus the ability to come back to council if we need extra funds, which we definitely at times do. So
Speaking of snow, how well did that portion of the budget do this year?
Patty?
We are under budget.
Yeah, in fact,
Right.
that's one of the areas that we've been able to do transfers to other areas to help cover maybe where there's a shortfall or something we needed to implement that maybe we weren't going to be able to. We were able to utilize some of those excess funds. So.
Can I just pose a follow-up here
Go
real
ahead.
quick? Is that contingency that you're talking about, is that a line item or is that just excess funds that you've got in other places? Because I didn't
we
see it,
actually-
so I just wanted to make sure that,
It's a line item in the non-departmental fund
Oh.
and the general fund. It's, I believe, $60,000 in the general fund. I think $30,000 in the utility fund, and I think maybe 4,000 or 6,000 in the
Okay.
airport fund.
I just missed it. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you
we
for
don't,
that.
we don't ever spend money out of that account. We transfer money to the appropriate account from that account.
Thanks.
And it comes to us as an ordinance, doesn't it? Or a resolution or some kind of notification. I know
No,
when.
when we originally set up the contingency, I think it was when Dale Bagley was here, he wanted to know every time we utilize contingency
Right.
funds, so we would bring a memo before council every single time, and at some point along the way, the decision was made that didn't need to happen anymore. I don't know. I'm happy to go back to doing that if you feel like you want to know when we utilize contingency funds. I mean, I keep track of it anyway, so it's nothing to bring a memo forward.
Yeah, I remember seeing memos on it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So if you.
that could have been 5 years ago or 5 minutes ago.
It's been several years, yeah, it's been several years ago that we did that, but like I said, I'm happy to bring those memos forward if you need them.
Anything else from the council? Moving right on.
Okay, so like I said, overall, little change, and we talked about that. And so Melanie's going to go through each of the department budgets and referring to the budget notes. As you'll notice in your document that anytime there were any changes, there are budget notes attached to the changes. I should say significant changes. And then if our department heads are here to answer questions as well.
So let's start on page 6 with the mayor and council budgets. And we're probably just gonna hit the highlights, things that are worth noting, probably not hit every single change in each department. And certainly if you have any questions as we go through these, just stop me and I'm happy to answer questions. In the mayor and council budget, the first item in there is an increase to travel and training, just due to an increase in overall travel costs and the addition of the NLC City Summit, which is something that the mayor and city and vice mayor have been attending for the last couple of years. It just hadn't been in our budget. We also increased or decreased, that's the wrong account number, I just noticed, sorry. Decreased advertising because we are no longer advertising the agendas in the newspaper, so we were able to reduce that expense. That's really the only changes in the mayor and department, or mayor and council department. Small overall decrease to the department. We'll move on to page 10, city manager department. Again, same as the mayor and council, we increased travel and training for the city manager to attend the NLC Summit with the mayor and vice mayor. And we added an Adobe Acrobat Pro license. Other than that, there's not much to report in this department. Overall, small increase. In the finance departments, we increased travel and training slightly, just due to increase in overall travel costs. Professional services went up because we just entered into a new contract with BDO for auditing services. And support and maintenance is another area that went up. The main part of the increase for support and maintenance contracts was related to adding the lodging tax module, which is an additional module that we were able to purchase for our Cassell software. And then inflationary increases in the Cassell support and maintenance as a whole. And other than that, that's,
Is that whole lodging tax collection turning out to be fairly, I won't say simple, but not as complicated as we all thought at one time?
we're working through the little kinks, little things are coming up as we go through it, but I think overall it shouldn't be too hard to manage. Our accountant is the one that's mainly managing that, Lana Metcalf. And she's had a lot of conversations with operators and she's been able to guide them and help them. And between the application, the application in Cassell that we're using, and then we use Express Bill Pay, which is the online payment piece of it. I think people have been pretty happy with how it's worked. And
So-
as far as our management of it, it's not too bad.
Contrary to some statements, it's running fairly smoothly then.
Yeah, it helps that we only have about 70 operators. If we had as many operators as like the borough has for sales tax, it would be much different. But the fact that we only have 70 is making it easier, yes.
Moving right along.
Moving on to the IT department.
Page 17
which
is what you was
17. Small tools is being increased, and that's that's an account that just varies every year because it's based on replacement schedules of security camera replacements, network devices, computers, tablets, servers. And so that's gonna kind of go up and down every year. But there's an increase to that account this year. Support and maintenance increased mainly for something called hypervisor software, which basically tripled in cost over this last year, and that was due to a change in ownership. I know our IT manager negotiated for about a year with them to try to get that to come down, and after a year of negotiating, we settled on the tripling in costs. So that was the big increase there. Computer software went up because we're adding Windows Server 2025 licenses. We're still using Windows 2019 server licenses. I believe he's planning on doing half in FY26 and half in FY27. And I think that's about it in that department. Moving on to the city clerk department, page 20. The biggest changes here are related to the I Voted sticker contest. We added cafe software to manage that. And we added some supply and award monies in the election account for the supplies related to the I Voted sticker contest. And then we were also able to reduce some regular election expenses to reflect anticipated expenditures that kind of offset that increase. But overall, there's a small increase in that department. Moving on to human resources on page 23. Biggest things to note here are the first one is contracted services. We were able to reduce healthcare broker services to what we thought we would need in the upcoming year. That's coming down basically because instead of entering into a full-blown contract with a broker, we've decided to do things more on a project basis, which saves the city money. That increase was offset slightly, or that decrease was offset slightly by an increase in police officer background checks due to increased recruitment. We also increased support and maintenance contracts due to FMCSA compliance software. In case anybody's wondering what that stands for, it's Federal Motor Clearinghouse Safety Administration. Evidently, we need to be compliant with them, so that's to help us do that. And I think that's basically all in this department, so overall decrease in the department. Next department is the police department, so page 27. Increased travel and training some because we have a lot of new officers that are needing additional training. I think the chief's overall plan is to try to bring as many people here as we can so everybody can get trained instead of sending everybody out.
And I would say add to that, the chief's been very successful with that and also includes the other agencies. Any agencies that we make space for them to attend as well, which also saves those agency costs, but really does decrease our costs.
Increase in materials and supplies to add battery replacements for the portable radios. That's a non-recurring expense that will just happen this year and won't be included next year. And that's offset by a decrease in gym equipment repairs that were included in the prior year. Also increasing small tools for several items. The first is for taser replacements. And I believe the plan is to replace a couple of tasers per year until they're all replaced. Also some Glock replacements, and that's because we have 2 retiring officers, and after 20 years of service, we let them purchase their service weapons. We also have the replacement of gym equipment included in that account, and the purchase of NARC Ranger, which is a drug identification device.
The dispatching fee, I noticed it's the same going into the new budget. Do we expect to see any changes from that, or have we heard anything from the borough on that?
We don't anticipate any changes, and what we found is that, as you know, in the contract, there's the look back period. They, monitor the calls, the amount of calls, and actually when they're invoicing us, it's less than the amount of the contract. We don't have the contract, the new contract, the current contract ends on June 30th. We don't have the new contract yet, but they are working on that. This is the number that they gave us for this year because we did tell them we wanted the number. We can deal with the contract part later, but for budget purposes, this is the number.
Go ahead, move ahead.
Janitorial is going down because when we put together the FY 24 and 25 budget, we were going out to bid for janitorial services, and we fully anticipated on them, raising the costs. However, they actually came in less than we thought they were going to. So you'll notice that janitorial accounts in each of the departments that have janitorial services are actually being reduced because those bids came in less than expected. Contracted services is being increased mainly due to polygraphs, due to increased recruitment. Support and maintenance contracts are going up for a couple of reasons. The first one is related to ARM software, which is about $11,200 a year. And it's something that was previously provided by the state at no cost to us. But for the last couple of years, we've been having to pay for it. And then the other increase to the support and maintenance account is for body worn fleet camera software. And that's Baycom. And that's something that you're going to be voting on at the next council meeting to change those body worn fleet camera softwares. And this is just the support and maintenance related to that. In FY 27, small tools is going up for the replacement of officer shotguns. And I think that's pretty much it in the police department.
So when the police officers retire and they buy their guns from the city, those go into the general fund, those revenues?
Okay, moving on to Public Works Administration. Not a lot of changes here. Support and maintenance is the biggest one. We added an Adobe Acrobat Pro license, Bluebeam, which is digitized plan review software, and then Cloud Permit, which is permitting software that I think we're just implementing now. And that's something that's being split with the planning department and the utility department. And if you have questions related to the permitting software, Linda can speak to that because she's the one spearheading that.
Any questions?
The only other increase in this department is related to in FY 27 is for the purchase of building code materials and supplies. Moving on to the shop departments. The only increase here worth noting is in FY 24, we purchased a vehicle diagnostic system. And so there's an increase in dues and subscriptions for the annual subscription of diagnostic updates for that system. In the street departments, travel and training is being increased to allow for the street department manager to attend the Con Expo 2026 conference. And it's offset slightly by a decrease in other travel and training. Materials and supplies is being reduced to reflect anticipated amount needed for salt. Janitorial is being decreased, as previously mentioned. Contracted services is being reduced to reflect anticipated amount needed for upcoming sidewalk repairs. So that's the sidewalk repairs that Scotty has planned for the upcoming year. And then the only other change is in the miscellaneous department, and this is related to the equipment seasonal oversize, overweight permits. And this is to just reflect what we're actually spending on those. Moving on to the building repair and maintenance department. The only increase here is related to pub work software, and it's just a small inflationary increase there. The next department is economic development and planning on page 43. We're reducing travel and training just to reflect the anticipated expenditures for the upcoming year. Advertising is being decreased to more accurately reflect usage now that agendas are not being advertised. Contracted services is being decreased to more accurately reflect usage. And then the biggest change here is related to software support and maintenance. This year, we've implemented several new softwares. Bluebeam is one that was also in the Public Works Administration Department. That's digitized plan review software. There's also Monday.com, which is project management software, and Granicus, which is short-term rental monitoring software. Both Monday.com and Granicus are also helpful with the lodging tax. So Linda and her department have been instrumental in helping manage some of the lodging tax things. Also Cloud Permit, which we previously talked about, which is being split between Public Works Admin, the Planning Department, and Utility Department. That's permitting software. So these have all been implemented in the current year, but this is just the support and maintenance related to those new softwares. Moving on to the library, page 46 and 47. Materials and supplies are being increased. We're increasing electronic materials due to greater demand. And then program supplies are being increased because we're offering more tween and adult programs, not just kids programs, and because there's higher turnout for programs than in the past. Office supplies are being reduced to reflect anticipated expenditures, so those are going down slightly. Telephone and internet is being reduced because we are eliminating the mobile data for patron hotspot program. Those devices are past their useful life and the program is being phased out. Janitorial bids or janitorial account went down as previously discussed. Postage is being increased to reflect the increased postage for interlibrary transits. Dues and subscriptions is being increased for online access to local and national newspapers, which is through Newsbank, and for popular online resources, which were previously funded by the Alaska State Library. That's for things like career and test preparation, auto repair, legal forms, early literacy resources, etc. And that increase is being offset slightly by a reduction in periodicals due to low circulation. Support and maintenance account is going up for Alaska Library catalog, which is being increased due to greater usage, and then just other small inflationary increases to the other support and maintenance contracts. And then in FY27, we're increasing office supplies to purchase library.
Mr. Jolson?
Just a quick question on this. My understanding is that with ebook rentals, we basically pay a fee every time someone checks one of those out, and it's just money that we lose every time someone does that. I'm trying to figure out how much we're spending on that annually versus money that could be spent on books that we keep.
So the system we use does not charge those kind of fees. It isn't the best system, but we essentially purchase a license and our library has access to that ebook for as long as the license goes for, which is sometimes it can be 24 months, it can be 26 checkouts, it can be whatever they say, but we do not purchase any pay-per-use.
Okay, it's the
licenses.
ones that expire after a certain number of uses that I was thinking of. I wasn't aware that they come in batches, but you basically get a certain amount of use out of it and then it goes away and you have to rebuy it.
Yes, and I would say that is a battle that's being fought at the federal level because that's what publishers are able to do right now. But there have been some court cases recently that make us hopeful that we will soon have the same rights with digital content as we do with print.
Got it. Do you know how much we spend annually on revolving licensing like that?
Well, currently it's been, I believe 5,000 is what we budgeted. I am hoping to increase it to 10,000. And I will say not all of those are as horrible. There is some content that we're able to get for better pricing. Like they'll have things in the public domain that they make work better with devices. But for the most part, that's just the only option we have.
Got it. Thank you.
Moving on. Okay, now we hit the Parks and Rec departments. One thing worth noting here on page 49 is where the Parks and Rec departments start, is that salary and benefits for the Parks and Rec staff were reallocated across all the Parks and Rec departments. So you'll notice that some departments might have more of an increase than other departments. You want to flip to page 50 and 51. We've increased travel and training just for greater emphasis on professional development. Materials and supplies is being increased or is being decreased because we eliminated Freon and the rink kick place replacement that were included in the prior year. That decrease is offset slightly by inflationary increases in operation and maintenance supplies, as well as an increase in programming supplies due to more themed skating events. Uniforms is being increased to provide uniforms for administrative staff. Vending supplies is increased due to reflect larger sales volume, as well as an inflationary increase in cost of supplies. Support and maintenance is being increased for software additions, and this includes When I Work, which is scheduling software, and then Lightspeed and MyRec, which Lightspeed is what we currently use as the point of sale system, and MyRec, which we were supposed to be moving toward for a point of sale system, and it was a scheduling software. Both of those are being replaced with Finley software and reallocated across all the Parks and Rec departments. And then the last item in support and maintenance that I think I'd like to have Joel talk about, because it's really pretty cool, is this Placer AI software, which shows foot traffic, visitor demographics, and consumer behavior for public spaces. And we've split the cost of that across all of the Parks and Rec departments.
Placer AI is just it's cell phone data that all the personal information gets scrubbed from the users, but we're able to track how many people are using our facilities. So you can't really put a door counter on a trail or a park. So if you think about like Wednesday, how many people are actually coming to the park to participate in the market or the music? And this software package will allow us to kind of track those numbers. So we're able to share a better picture of how many people are using our facilities. Also, how many people are residents versus non-residents. It'll kind of show where these cell phones are from and where they're going. A lot of departments are using it, or parks departments are using it for maintenance related things where you might see an influx of users using a particular park or a trail at a particular time. So you can adjust your staffing to go to that particular space and check the garbages or the bathrooms before that influx of users. So there's a lot of different really cool ways that departments are going to be able to be more efficient and just being able to paint the picture rather than just guessing. You know, everybody's been to a Wednesday. You're like, there's a lot of people, but it'd be really nice to know who these people are. Not who they are, sorry. Just how many people are there.
Does that include like time of day?
Yep. So I was able to do a demo and look at just, the sports center, the ice arena on a particular Bears game. And, we could see that there was, 4,500 people there. And a majority of them were obviously locals, but then also surrounding Sterling, Nikiski residents and kind of seeing the bigger picture.
But it only shows the ones that actually have a cell phone.
Correct. Yeah.
So-
There's kind of an algorithm where they've been doing this for quite a while, where they kind of have figured out each cell phone, you know, if it's a family, it counts as so many people or whatever. So it's still an estimate.
Mr. Carey?
Just I'm greatly interested in the data. I heard you mention residents versus non-residents, and so will this data provide knowledge of who is where?
It will show us how many people are using a particular facility. And it'll show where that particular cell phone is registered. So like the demo that I did with the sports center for a Bears game, you know, I was curious on how many people were Soldotna residents versus, you know, Sterling, Nikiski, and there was, you know, Eagle River and Anchorage residents there too. It doesn't get into the weeds of where what address they're from, or any sort of, you know, specific details like that.
So kind of follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm interested from a legal standpoint or a court standpoint.
Mhm.
Could our data that we are taking be used in court for a trial or for prosecution? Could this be used to determine where a particular person was at a particular time?
The particular company that we're going with, it is a higher cost for this particular data set, this Placer AI, where behind the scenes, they take all the personal information out. We don't receive any of that when it comes to our computers. Some of the cheaper companies don't have as high standards. And so we've opted to go with a company that's been around probably the longest. It's one of the more recognizable companies. Other departments in other states have been using this for, you know, 15 years or so.
So just so I'm sure I understand what you said. So what we're going to be using is not information which we could be required by a court order to present in a trial or a legal issue.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Carey, I can
And-
explain a little bit more about how this works. So there's a saying in technology that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So my understanding of the law, the way these services are built is, you know, when you download apps on your phone that provide a service and you're not paying for it, you know, we've all had software that we work with where you scroll through the terms of service and you just tap agree without reading on it. A lot of these apps, if you read the fine print, will say that they have the right to take your data and track you, and then they sell that. So I philosophically don't really like this because a lot of these people don't realize that they're being tracked when they're using these apps, and those apps are reselling that data to companies like this that then aggregate it after anonymizing it and then resell it themselves for a profit. So that's just how these work. They're basically taking your data and tracking it without your knowledge for most people and selling it.
I'm thinking along legal lines myself that if information is available, if it was, we're at one level, but if they have collected information that's at a much deeper level, that if there was an incident there, that the police department could come in and say, hey, we want to know who was in that area at that particular time because they may be witnesses to a serious crime that occurred.
That would occur outside of this. So they typically in legal proceedings like this, and I believe our chief would be more familiar with it, they can go directly to the carriers and request that data from them without having to work with app providers.
But could they go to the carrier, whoever's providing this service, and say, here's a subpoena, we want this information?
It would be a subpoena, but it'd be to the cell phone carrier. They have much more accurate data than what these companies have.
I'm looking at the chief and I think he's probably thinking about the same thing I'm thinking.
I'm not familiar with this one. I know Strava, the running app. I think it's Strava. We had similar ones with that, but it's usually that user that we went for. And so we serve a search warrant on Strava to show where that person was. This would be hard. If we were looking at one person, you might get it, but you will never get like a group of people. Maybe some fancy Fed could do that, but I could never see getting tell me all the, serving a search warrant on this company and say, can you tell me who was at the sports center at this time? That I don't think would ever happen. I can't see a judge ever
I guess we'll
But they
cross
could
that
maybe
bridge.
like an individual user,
I guess
if you
we'll-
had something to lead and give you probable cause against that person.
I guess we cross that bridge if something serious happens. So moving right along.
That's the only changes in the ice arena department. We have renamed this department from the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Department to the ice arena department. You're gonna flip to page 54 and 55. That's the campground department. Materials and supplies, we eliminated the picnic table replacement that was included in the prior year. So that's a decrease for that, but it was offset by a slight increase for repair and maintenance supplies due to yearly repair of fishing platforms and stairs and for well house roof repairs. Uniforms is being increased to supply branded uniforms and safety boots to temporary employees. Vending supplies is being increased to reflect larger sales volume as well as inflationary increases in cost of supplies. It's basically for ice. Sanitation is being increased to provide additional portable bathrooms in the campgrounds due to the removal of 3 permanent bathrooms that are no longer usable. 2 of those being in Swiftwater Campground and 1 in Centennial. Rental account is being reduced because we're eliminating the rental of bear-proof trash cans because the trash cans are actually being donated to the city. So we no longer have that rental cost. Support and maintenance account is being increased for the same reason as in the ice arena. Same changes there. Except for there is an additional inflationary increase added to Lightspeed because that's the point of sale system that even though we're eliminating it in the other departments, we're keeping it for the campgrounds because it works very well there, at least for now. In FY 27, contracted services is being increased in order to dredge the Centennial Lagoon to remove sediment accumulation. That's done about every 5 years or so. And that's the only changes in the campgrounds.
Go ahead.
So this would be for Joel. During COVID, we were having a hard time with campground hosts. How's that going now?
Campground hosts we have our whole team back. And they've been the same team, I think, since I've been here, 10 years now. So we have, all of them are in place right now. And I think the last group is driving in this week, or the last couple. So it's been good. They've been great.
And we were able to open the campgrounds earlier this year than in previous years.
Yeah, we opened up just a few days earlier than normal. A lot of that, even though we had a low snow year, there's still a lot of maintenance that happens preseason. And we don't want to damage the road. So we have to wait for that to dry out. Otherwise, we have to bug Scotty more and more to grade the campground.
And it's thank you to whoever donated the bear-proof trash cans.
The Bears may not like them, but
Okay, so moving on to the Parks Department, page 59. An increase in travel and training due to greater emphasis on professional development. An increase in materials and supplies for the seesaw replacement at Soldotna Creek Park, which is happening in FY 26. And then in FY 27, they're replacing the playground rope system at Soldotna Creek Park. Also in FY 26, materials and supplies, that increase was offset slightly by the elimination of gravel for trails that was included in the prior year. Uniforms is being increased to supply branded uniforms and safety boots to temporary employees, similar to the campgrounds. Sanitation is being increased to add hand washing stations at Soldotna Creek Park. Contracted services is being increased for well monitoring at Soldotna Creek Park, which is typically done every 3 years. We have been informed recently that this requirement to do this well monitoring may be discontinued. So that might be something we don't end up spending the money on this year, and maybe we won't have to do it in the future. Waiting to hear back from the state.
is that monitoring done through DEC or something like that?
It's done through a contractor that we use here, but it's a requirement by DEC. So DEC is the one that dictates whether or not we have to continue monitoring.
The same type of monitoring they do at any public facility that uses ground, wells. Oh, I thought you were moonlighting over there as the media.
The Salt Creek Park's a former DOT maintenance facility, and there was some salt chloride contamination, and so there's a testing requirement, sampling requirement every 3 years, as noted, that's attached to the parcel by DEC. They've informed us that due to the results and not much change, that they may eliminate the testing of it. So it's specific to the particular type of contamination that's on that site that's not migrating and not changing. And they've decided that continuing sampling is probably not necessary. We're waiting on the official word from DEC, though.
And that's for the water wells, correct?
No, it's groundwater sampling. So there's there used to be 8, I believe, and we're down to about 3 wells. We eliminated some that were not testing positive or had gone below cleanup levels. So there are just 3 individual groundwater monitoring wells. So they're probably 8 or 6 inch casing that they just connect to and pull some samples
Okay,
out
so
of.
it's not,
Not drinking water wells,
it's
no.
not potable water. then?
Correct, just
Okay.
groundwater. Yep.
No, Mr. Karen.
Do we either formally or informally monitor the usage in terms of number of people that use the different parks?
Well, with the telephone usage,
We will soon. We do not have a good way. We based the wear and tear of these parks, the amount of trash, the amount of graffiti, and how fast our playground equipment is degrading is kind of how we judge. But with this new software that we're adding, we'll be able to tell, 100 kids used Farnsworth on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but nobody was there on Sunday. So then, we'll have a better picture.
go ahead.
Excellent. And Soldotna Creek Park has been such a huge success. I'm interested in monitoring its usage to eliminate abuse of it. And so I'm very pleased that we will have, it sounds like more formal data so that we could see whether or not it's being overused potentially. Thank you.
Moving on.
So to finish up the Parks Department, support maintenance contracts, that's similar to the other departments that we already talked about. I did add in for FY '26 for the first time, lease on the Aspen parking lot, based on the contract we have with the Aspen Hotel. That's something we've been paying the taxes on each year, but we haven't ever included it in the budget. So I included an amount in the budget for that. And then the next department is our field house.
Aspen, with the change in ownership, has that changed that agreement at all?
It hasn't at this time. However, we do anticipate that at some point we will make contact with the new owner, but we haven't had any contact yet, but we will make that contact.
Thank you.
Before we leave the parks, and the ice rink, I was thinking of something earlier and forgot to ask it. I know we had contracted to have an evaluation of the system, the freezing system, the ice system. And I think it's well overdue. Do we have any idea what's going on there?
Yeah, I got an email contact from him today that we had sent, they had done a draft a few months back. We had added some different language, updated some of their data, just on the historical maintenance of our facility. He said today that they will have it back to us by the end of this week, a final copy of that draft, and then we'd be able to share it with you guys. So we're very close.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the field house. Can't report any changes here because it's brand new. I will tell you that the cost of the field house here is $649,957. That's not 100% accurate. That's what we have allocated to the field house right now, but that's not all new expenditures. Because remember before I had told you how we reallocated some of the Parks and Rec staff across all the departments. So some of the already existing staff are now being allocated to the field house. So the actual new cost of the field house for operations is $594,024.
594.
024. And this is really just, with it being a brand new department, brand new building, this is really just kind of our best guess. And Joel did a lot of work comparing other facilities that are similar to ours. And this is, our best guess at how this is going to go. So fingers crossed.
This is our plan.
This is our plan. And then the last department in the general fund is the non-departmental department. The first item is janitorial, which we previously talked about. The next item is support and maintenance. Was decreased because the website contract came in less than expected previously. The next item is the remote seller sales tax collection fees. That's being increased and that's based on projected revenue. So as revenues are going up, so are the expenditures related to that. The visitor center contracts being increased for CPI based on the new contract we have with them. And then miscellaneous payroll expenditures, that is being decreased some because in the last biennial budget, we included for the first time some recruitment expenditures, which is for hiring bonuses, relocation assistance, and employee referrals. And to date, we haven't yet used any of those. So we're reducing it slightly. We do still need to have some out there because we do feel like it will happen at some point, but we feel like we probably don't need the amount that we had before. And then lastly, in this department, this is where those non-departmental agencies are funded. They're going to be here tomorrow to do their presentations and they'll be available to answer any questions. I will say that what we included in this budget is what was approved by the council last time for each of these agencies. That might differ from what they requested this time. For example, the Boys and Girls Club, previously we funded them $40,000. They've requested $50,000. The Historical Society, previously we funded them $5,000. They requested $10,000. And that's in addition to what they get out of the May Chachansky Trust, which in FY25 was a little over $9,000. And then the Soldotna Senior Citizens, we didn't fund them anything last time, and they've put in a request similar to what they previously had received from us at $12,900. So if there's any changes to what we have included in the budget, that's something that if you let us know ahead of time, we can be prepared with amendments for you, and those can be amended at the public hearing. Really,
Go ahead,
that's it.
Vice Mayor. Paul.
So wasn't paying attention, but Salteshi's the same.
Salteshi is the same. They requested the same
Yeah.
amount as before.
And then city lobbyist, does that include Juneau and Washington? There was 119,000.
Yes.
Yes, that includes both.
And that concludes the non-departmental. As far as the non-departmental
Nelson.
agencies,
I mean, just
oh,
real quick, probably for the city manager here, following up with Vice Mayor Park's question. I seem to recall we added the lobbyist just a few years ago. I guess my question is the lobbyist worth the money we're paying? Are we getting value out of that in your judgment?
Mhm. I would say so. Lobbyists do things that we can't do. For instance, they're there, they learn, what's going on, and they can relay that back to us. The federal lobbyists really helped us with the CDS funding, submitting all of our CDS requests. Now it's called Community Partnership Fund. that may not be correct. CPF fund, Congressman Begich III has requested additional information. Our federal lobbyist contacted us. We're working, we have a very tight time frame. They contacted us regarding 2 potential funding opportunities. And so we are getting everything to them. Had we not had them, we probably wouldn't know about these requests. So really, I do believe they're providing information to us that we couldn't obtain on our own without, being there.
And it's not a huge amount. I was just curious for a professional contract. That's not a lot of money. It sounds like we might actually get a return on investment on
I
that.
do believe we do, yes.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Wackler.
I had a question about, I wasn't here when those lobbyists were hired. How many years are left in their contracts, if any?
The state lobbyist contract ends at the end of June. I would have to get back to you on the federal. I believe it's another year, but I can get back to you on that. At this time, the state lobbyist contract will be, it will run its term, and then we'll go from there, making decisions on, do we make a change? Do we not? So in that research part of things is where we are, but I'll get back to you on the federal. I think it's another year.
And then also I had included, in the email that I sent each of you, as well as in your hard copies, there are the requests for the non-departmental agencies. If you wanted to review them before the meeting tomorrow. Includes their requests. I think that's all I have.
That's all we have for you today, unless you have questions. And like Melanie said, if you know that you have amendments, please send them to us ahead of time. So Melanie can run all of the numbers. We'd really appreciate that. So you can get accurate information from us.
Ms. Wackler.
Do you want those CC'd both of you in an email? That would be
Right.
preferred?
Mhm.
Okay.
And we are going to enlist the city clerk's help, and she will help script the motion.
So the best way for you to receive those would be the 3 of you.
Yes, please send
Thank
it to the 3 of us.
Mr. Carey.
Just want to comment, this is an excellent budget. The small amounts of increases when you talk about inflation and that type of thing, this is wonderful. Thank you for the work that's been done by all of the staff.
Vice Mayor Parker.
And echo Councilmember Carey, and we're adding a department when we add the field house. So when I looked through it, I didn't see where overall there's not significant increases in our budget. We're not, I would say we are not extravagant when it comes to putting things together. Time frame, we've got the meeting tomorrow, and then if we have amendments, changes, what's the time frame on getting that to you?
The sooner the better, because then Melanie can run all of the numbers. So as soon as you know them, if you would send them to us, that'd be great. The budget will introduce on the 28th, and then the public hearing on June 11th. And of course, June 11th, we dropped a date for amendments unless you choose to postpone the whole budget, but hopefully not. But that would be the drop dead date.
I did have one other thing. There's a couple of amendments that we know may
Mhm.
happen. We did the city manager and city clerk evaluations at the last meeting, and the budget was already too far along to make those changes. So we'll put amendments together for those increases. And then also I'm waiting for insurance numbers from APRA, which is Alaska Public Risk Alliance, which is AMLJIA and Alaska Public APEI have merged into APRA. So the new insurance company, this is not health insurance, this is general liability, workers' comp, property, automobile, that kind of insurance. We don't have numbers back yet from them. So included in this budget is an estimate. If when we get the numbers back, if I get them back before the public hearing, if they're significant enough, I will maybe change those numbers. So those will be amendments that we'll be bringing forward to you.
There
Getting-
that
is,
we know of.
Yeah, we're
there
getting-
is a possibility too, and I don't know if we'll get there, but if the union contract is ratified or agreed upon, that we may have some amendments. I don't know that that will happen, but just keep that in mind.
We're getting like the federal government, too many alphabet departments and are not here in the city, but everybody else has got an alphabet for them. Nobody can figure out what they mean half the time. Mr. Chilson.
I guess before we wrap, I'd like to preface this by saying thank you for all the work that goes into this. I know preparing the budget every 2 years is a tremendous task, and I am deeply appreciative of that. I feel like maybe we just went past this a little bit too quickly, but, and maybe I'm just overly concerned about this, but the fact that when you look at the general budget, we're looking at almost a $2 million deficit spend on that. I know we have the field house that's starting this year, but that's only $594,000 in additional costs. So are those concerns valid? I mean, can you maybe speak to that a little bit more? Because again, I feel pretty alarmed when I see a $2 million deficit spend out of our general fund.
Right. Keep in mind, there is a projected lapse there, so that brings it down to about a $1.2 million deficit. And about half of that is related to the field house. So the rest of it, a good chunk of it, 113,000, I think, is related to PERS on behalf, which there's a revenue increase and an expenditure increase, but the net effect is zero.
But we're still
So-
looking at about
So it's
over
kind of like you can
$500,000
ignore
deficit then.
that. So the rest of them are things like, personnel, salaries and benefits.
And we
board
can certainly
maintenance
stomach
contracts,
that
things
for a
like
year.
that.
We have thankfully a healthy cash reserve, but
Yeah.
I
and
guess at what point do
typically-
we have to make, changes in what we're spending to reduce expenditures to where we can sustain that moving forward year after year? In theory, I don't like to see any kind of deficit, any operating year.
I agree.
And that's a conversation that Melanie and I had, because like I said, I've never been involved in a budget where there's deficit. It's always a balanced budget, and that's what I'm used to seeing. This is the process that's used here, and as you know, it's worked well.
Okay.
We talked about the lapsing funds and her comfort level with it and my comfort level. We didn't align at first, but anyway, we got there. And it's something that we're going to watch throughout the year. And again, mid-biennium, we can make changes. As you know, we reduced some projected revenue last year because we didn't feel that we were going to receive that revenue. So we will make changes along the way if we need to. And in that, no one likes to cut, but if we have to, we will. So it is a plan, and this is our plan, but well aware of that deficit, and
Okay.
we
And-
will definitely watch it.
And we kind of knew that with bringing the field house online, that the first year would be a little, painful, but
It's all-
generally speaking, at the end of the year, we don't, we might look upside down when we present the budget, but at the end of the year, we're generally not. I don't know how that's going to look this year with adding a whole new department, but
The presentations
isn't
we've
gonna
seen
look
at
as bad
Parks
as
and
it looks
Rec,
here.
it's going to take a year or two at least before
The
we see
ramp-up
revenues
period,
come
yeah,
up
for the
online to the
revenue,
levels
yes.
we'd expect for the field house. So
It's a learning curve with that place. So,
we'll feel it out for a year and see where we are halfway through this. Okay, thank you.
working my way down the line, Mr. Nelson,
I don't think I have anything else.
Okay.
Good.
Ms. Hutchings. Thank you for all your hard work on this. You only get one shot. Hey, it was only one shot all the way down the line. You want me to start all over again? Okay. Okay. Ms. Wackler.
I feel like Ms. Parker should go first. No comment.
Okay. Now,
He's afraid to
go ahead.
talk.
Go ahead.
So, one of the things that we are making a change, we're adding the field house, we're going to have additional people coming to town, but we're also going to have additional revenue through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, which is revenues that we haven't had in the past. The other changes, and I have to commend our Scotty and Rob for the work that they've done in helping Fred Meyer bring back online later this month or next month. The dump station that they have at Fred Meyer realized that they were seeing a loss in revenue and that they might need to do something to enhance it. And because they didn't have that dump station last year, they were losing revenue. And working with our folks, they were able to come up with a solution that wasn't difficult. And we need to commend that we've got people reaching out and doing these things to make the city better and to work with businesses here in town. And so while we see a deficit potentially, when we evaluate this in 6 months or a year from now, we could find that things are spot on line and no deficit.
And as the field house continues on and gets going more, hopefully we'll see some increase in sales tax revenue for all the people coming to town to events at the field house. So hopefully we'll be seeing revenues outside of just the field house revenues.
Mhm. Also, we're, as you know, you've approved and then there's been an appeal process, but through multifamily housing developments that are going in that will be complete within the year, also adds some property tax, but also the sales tax revenues from those folks shopping here in town as well.
Well, you've done a good job on the budget. We'll hear the rest of it tomorrow. Thank you for all your hard work. And as far as the tourist season, they're here already. I was talking to 4 of them from Florida. They had originally started on the cruise, and the cruise ended up back in Seattle, so they decided to fly back up here and spend another couple of weeks. And they're driving around all over the state, down here on the peninsula on Sunday. Spent a couple of days here and spent lots of money.
Yay.
So we like to see them. Anything else to come before us? If not, then we will adjourn.